to the last row. Yes, over the web. Am I audible over the web? Yeah. Okay. So let me try to answer the first question. Can the Docker be used for monolithic application? Is your monolithic application a web application, or which uses web services, or a desktop application? If it is desktop, no. If it is web, yes. That's how it works. If it is any service based architecture, it works. So for example, database is not web. Database is basically database server is a service based application. It runs in the background. Anything which runs in the background continuously for your application to work can be a service, but definitely not desktop applications. So for example, I cannot have Microsoft Word on Docker, right? Why is Word used? Word is used for editing, for which you need some client sort of stuff. No, we can't, right? But for example, if you are using something like stock market service, you make a request onto that web page, you log in into that web page, and you will say that I want the history of this stock for the last 5 years. You will get a graph. All of that is web application which is running in the background. It is possible. Similarly, database, cache server, okay, Jenkins, Elasticsearch, anything which is a service, okay, let it be a web service or a non-web service which runs continuously, can be Dockerized or can be containerized. That's how it would work, right? Yeah. Okay. So in the last class, we have discussed few commands and we have understood the meaning of it. Let me start with that. Okay. It has been 2 days, right? Let us see how efficient our brains are working after 2 days of holidays, right? Yeah. Docker has two components to it. What are they? Client and server, or you can call it as daemon. Generally in the Linux world, we call the service as daemon. Okay. For the people who are from Microsoft backgrounds, daemon is much like your Windows service, right? Which runs in the background continuously, or which has a capability to start on its own when your system is started. All of that, right? So whenever we do Docker run, what would happen? What is the first step? Docker run is a command that is executed on the client. So client will do what? It will ask daemon, right? And daemon, what is the first step of the daemon? It will check in the local repository whatever image he is asking for is existing or not. If it is existing, from that image a container is made. If it is not existing, it will go and ask the repository. The default repository is Docker Hub. Okay, the default repository is Docker Hub. It will download from there, right? And this download operation is called as pull, right? And then once you have the container, the only thing which you have to do is basically convert that image into a container. That's how it would work, right? I think we have tried Docker run hello world. For the first time, it has downloaded. Again, I have executed the same command, Docker run hello world. This time also container started, but the problem was it was not downloaded because it is already present in your local repository. Now, in Docker, the essence of the major thing which we develop is called as the image. It's called as image, or to be more specific, we call it as container image. To make it specific to Docker terminology, we call it as container image, right? Converting your application into this container image is called as containerization. You remember what are the two major responsibilities of a DevOps engineer in Docker world? One is to containerize applications, and the second one is to orchestrate the applications. The first step is building your Docker image. There are a couple of major ways. One is you do manually and create a Docker image, right? You basically get into the Docker container, do some activities, and then based out of it, you create a Docker container. But that is not an approved way. For creating the container image, the way which we are going to follow is writing something called as Docker file. To create the container image, we'll be writing something called as Docker file. And for writing Docker file, you don't need any programming language. You don't need any programming language. Docker has its own specifications around it. And in this file, you would write how will you manually bring that application up. In this file, you will write how will you manually bring that application up. That's it. This is your first job. మీరు మీ కంపెనీ కొత్తగా డాకర్లోకి వెళ్తున్నప్పుడు డైరెక్ట్గా కుబర్నెటాస్ దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళరు. దే డోంట్ గో టు కుబర్నెటాస్ డైరెక్ట్లీ బికాస్ for something that has to be worked in Kubernetes, first you need to have images. So this is the first and foremost responsibility of you, which is creating images. All right, and then running these images in the container itself, single containers. Right there, you need to know some commands. There you need to know some commands. And once you are good at both of these worlds, you understand all the aspects of Docker. Okay, we would proceed further and we would be learning something called as storage and networking. Once you are good at all of this, then you can think of something called as Kubernetes. That is a shorthand notation of Kubernetes, K8S. Whenever you see something that people they make it that it is a Kubernetes. That's it. So these are all the steps left for us to meet to our goal, which is Kubernetes, which can get you jobs, right? But we have to start from our basic stuff. So today what we are going to do is we will be starting with very, very basic commands. Very basic commands. Okay. And I don't want you to remember any commands. I would be showing you a view. I want you to follow that. Don't try to memorize commands. They will not work out. Right? They will never work out. Always try to go with the documentation part, because Docker changes very rapidly. Okay. So whenever we work on Docker, there will be many command line options that will be added. For example, you take the Docker command now, you memorize it. 3 months after, you would have a new Docker release where there might be some more extra command line arguments. There will not be many commands, but there will be command line options definitely are added. Okay. So for example, initially it was an interview question. Basically, how do you check the memory of your Docker container? That was very difficult, right? Now we have a command called as Docker stats, which was not there earlier. So things basically change every time. So don't have a habit of memorizing the stuff. Not a very good habit. Not a very good habit. So let us explore certain commands. Okay. I will start with my images. Okay. And then I will basically get into the other commands as such. Right. First is repository based, local repository based commands. And in the last class, I had also said that to check whether the image is present in the local repository or not, we execute a command which is called as docker space images. To see what are the containers that are running, we use something called as docker space ps. So these are all the commands. Okay. Now for doing this, what I do is docker command line. This is your first step. Okay. You go through here, and whatever you are seeing at the left side of the system are basically all of your commands. All right. I will not be in a position to check every command and say that this what does it do. I will be basically using the mostly used commands which will be useful for you. But don't stop it at that. Don't stop it at that. Right. That's the first thing. Now the other stuff is what you can do is, once you are familiar with some sort of commands, you just need a hint to understand. Okay, what is the command which I need to run? Okay, first is this docker command line. Go to the Docker's official documentation and read through everything. Whenever you are running any command, for example in Docker images, okay, so let me scroll down and you would be seeing something called as Docker images. Click over here and you would be seeing the options. So these are all the command line options. Okay, there is no need for you to remember anything, but see the options, just understand what they mean. All right. So in Docker images, I can do something called as filtering. I can say show all images. All right. And there is something called as quiet. There is something called as no truncate. There is something called as format. And then you try to understand how do I use all of them. This is always the way. And once you know some basic commands, you can go to the Google and search for something called as Docker cheat sheet. You will get some PDF, some PDF or some link out of it. Take a printout of this. Okay. and basically try to stick it to your desk. This is a very huge cheat sheet. Let me try to do something. Yeah, this looks better. Something like this, which will give you some comments. All right, you would find many cheat sheets over the web. Try to see whatever that makes sense to you. Whenever you're working on Docker, have it stick it onto your desk. There is nothing, no problem with it. This is how we learn. So in the whenever you are asked to work on Kubernetes, you cannot remember all the CLI. You understand the basics, you look at the CLI, you get this cheat sheet printed, stick it onto your desk, start working. Because if you miss on something, this is a quick reference. Even if you don't find it here, anyway we have Google. This is an approach, because we cannot remember. Every tool will have approximately 30 to 40 command lines to remember, and you are learning 6. So 200 commands approximately which you have to learn, apart from 100 from Linux and approximately 50 from Windows. We don't have that memory, right? We have some restrictions. So the only way how you can memorize these commands are by doing it, using it a lot. And Docker images another గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉండదు, ఎందుకంటే we use it a lot. Similarly Docker PS. But if there is anything that has been asked specifically, I'll go to the CLI. I'll go to the CLI. Please follow this approach. We cannot remember all the CLI commands. Not happening. Right? Okay. Now, if you remember, in the last class, I have installed Docker on a Linux machine on AWS. Let me log in into that and play around with that. Right? First, I will start with the command lines for basic image management. Okay. And then container management. Okay. There is no need for you to write whatever I am writing over here, because this I will share it to you once the class is finished. Once you finish Docker, you will get this as a PDF format. Okay. Okay. I'll copy this command, and in the last class we have seen we install git bash and all of that stuff, right? So I'm using the same stuff again. Wherever I have PEM file, I go there, I copy this command, I'll be inside the Linux machine. Yes. Okay. Now let us basically look into the first command, which is image management. I want to see in my local repository what are the different commands that are available, what are the different images that are available. So Docker. So I have images which is Jenkins, Nginx, and Hello World. And if you see over here, there is something called as tag. I'll come back to what that is. There is one more thing which is important, which is called as tag. And every image will have a unique ID that is created. Every image will have unique ID that will be created, and then you will have some history of it, which is called as created. And remember, this is the creation date of the image, not when you download it. So for example, whenever someone has the Nginx image has been created 12 days ago, so this is not about you, this is about the actual image when it was being created, right? And the size of the image, and then the size of the image. For example, Jenkins image is of the size 696, Nginx is of the size 109, Hello World is very small, it is of the size 1.85 KB. So every image comes up with these following attributes, right? Now let me basically, okay, try to see the option -a. I will not see any difference. I will not see any difference. -a is useful whenever you are using multiple repositories. -a is useful whenever you are using multiple repositories. But if you see, if you have done in my class, I have not connected to any other registry. So what is my default registry? Docker Hub. So from the Docker Hub, I have downloaded these three stuff. So it is showing me all. So in this scenario, if you have only one repository, using -a or not using -a doesn't make any sense. They're all same. Okay, they're all same. Right. Now we have images. Every image will have unique image ID. Right? Fine. Let us see the basic containers. So Docker PS. Are you seeing any containers? Did we create it in the last class? But I'm not seeing anything. Okay. So what is a PS command basically? Linux, in Linux, what is a PS command? Process command. Okay. And it will give about the running processes, or the current processes, or the process which you have executed earlier also. Current process. So Docker PS will give you information of the containers which are running right now. Which are running right now. So as of now in the system, there is no container that is running. That is what it means. But if you want to know the history of all the containers that have been run on the system, right, you can basically use docker ps -a. Here you are seeing the list of some of the containers which we have ran in the last class. Now here you see the created date, 2 days ago, right? Image to container we have created it in our Friday class. So that's why it is telling 2 days ago. All right. This is a container creation date, like, and every container will have a container ID and also a container name, and also a container name. Let us just have a look at it. This is the name of the container. Wonderful Chandrasekhar. Did I give that name? No. Whenever you don't give any name, Docker ad hocly picks up some name and adds it to. Okay, it can be anything. Docker basically randomly gives some name to that container. So there is no container in Docker without any name. It will always have some name. The only difference is whether you give it, or whether Docker assigns it. Right? Similarly, for all the other containers, so there is something called as Upbeat Mahavira. It gives ad hoc names. Okay. So for any container, important thing is you will have ID. Right? For example, in Hello World, we have two different Hello Worlds which we have launched. Right? One, the first time whenever we launched, we didn't have that image, and the second time when we ran, we already had the image. Right? So every time whenever you launch, a container will have a unique container ID and a unique container name, and you can use any of these two to control. Any of these two to control. Are we good? So image will have a image ID, container will have container ID. In image, the created date which you are seeing is not the actual creation date which you have done. It is the creation date of the image actually. Right? So in the whereas when in the container, whenever you have executed docker run, that is the creation of the container. Docker run is a command used to create the container from the image. So that is the history which you are seeing. All right. Now let me do one thing. I'll do this. Docker run -p 8080 colon 8080. I'll come back to what these things are. But I'm running Jenkins. All right. Have I given any name here? No. Let us see what happens. 1 minute, guys. 1 minute. I'll be adding only one stuff to this. Apart from this, I'll be adding -d. Okay. -d is run in the background. Don't show me all the console outputs. Run in the background quietly. I want my terminal to be reused. Okay. This -d is called as a detached mode. This -d is called as a detached mode. Now let us see. Right. Now I do docker ps. I'll get only information about this container, because this is the only running container in my system as of now. If I use -a, I'll get everything. If I use -a, I'll get everything. Okay. Now let me start one more container. Docker run -d -p 80 colon 80 hyphen name. Okay. My name Nginx. Okay. Now let me do docker ps. I have two containers that are running right now. Docker ps. See the first container's name. Whenever you pass hyphen name and give something to it, that is the name which you are explicitly passing. Whenever you don't use that hyphen name stuff, okay, which means that the container has to assign, or Docker engine will assign some name to it. Right? Okay. Good. Right. Now let me run this. Docker run hello world. Okay. So how many containers will be running now in Docker PS? 4. As of now, I had 2. I've run one more container. Right? So how many? 3. 2 plus 1, 4. అంటే వైల్డెస్ట్ ఇమాజినేషన్ 2 plus 1 అయి ఉండాలి. Right? It has to be 3 normally. Let us see what is happening. How many are you seeing? 2. Hello world is not seen over here because hello world is not a service. Hello world is not a service. So it is a short-lived container. It will display the command line application. It will come out. That's the responsibility of that container. So containers are of 2 categories. One are which are short-lived, and remember, short-lived containers are of no use. They are good only for learning. They don't have any enterprise relevance, right? But in the other case, whenever we want to run this container, okay, we want to run them continuously. That is the actual design which we need to do. So we should never design a container which looks like that hello world. Okay, because what is happening with hello world? You run docker run hello world, it will check whether the hello world image is present in your local registry or not. If it is not present, it will download, then it will create the container, and once it creates the container, what should happen is designed within the image of this container. And in the image of the container, the stuff that was written for hello world was just use some print statements. Done. Print statements were finished, container is killed. Okay, so in docker, the lifetime of the container depends on how you have written the image. Are we getting the whole point? కంటైనర్ ఎంతసేపు బ్రతుకుతుంది అన్నది మనం క్రియేట్ చేసిన ఇమేజ్ని బట్టి ఉంటుంది. There are other ways where you can make hello world run forever, but those are all plumbing way. They are not the ideal way of really working on this container. So this short-lived stuff will be learning while we write our containers. Always remember, docker will be showing the processes of the container which are only running. A container will be in a running state only when there is something to run. For example, you are running a Tomcat server. Okay, will you shut down the Tomcat, or whenever the user makes a request, then you start Tomcat, or will it be running forever? When you go with database, will the database will be running forever, or whenever you want to use it, you will start the service and then you will run it? No, right? It will be running forever. So these are all the kind of applications which we can containerize. Are we getting the whole point? Right. Now I want to get rid of some of the containers. I want to remove containers. Pardon me? I'll come back to that. ప్రస్తుతానికి ఏమో మీకు తెలియదు, అది చూడలేదు మీరు, రైట్? ఓకే, సో now I want to remove containers, or I want to kill containers. All right, remember, when you remove containers, you will also lose history. Whenever you are removing a container, you are not only removing the container, you are also losing the history of it, right? So now to remove the container, we'll be using something called as rm command. Docker rm. So today I have spoken about 3 commands: docker images, docker ps, and docker rm. Now, so first thing which you will do is go to the docker website. Here you will have all of them. You are seeing ps, right? And similarly I'll be using rm. Okay, and the next thing which I'll be using is rmi, right? So everything is here. There is nothing which I'm telling outside of this stuff. Okay, and whatever I'm telling is nothing but a simple explanation of what has been written there. All right, so docker rm. And if you don't know how to use it, you can always use this. He will tell you what has to be done. Okay, so let us basically do this: docker rm, and now here I have to give name of the container or id of the container. Name of the container or id of the container. So I know one name, which is my name, because this is something which I have written it. All right, so let us see whether this container will be removed or not. It will not be. It will tell that this container is running. This container is running and I cannot delete it. If you want it to be deleted, stop that container and then I'll be able to delete it. Yes, that is the error message if you read it. Now, if you want to sort it out, there is one more way. You can be rude to the Docker. You can say that I want to remove this container. I am not worried whether it is running or not. I will use -f. It is a force delete. Now, if you see, it will not complain. It will silently do its job. Right? Now, let me do docker ps -a. Are you seeing anything called as my name over here? I also lost history. Remember that. Right? So, if you don't want to lose history, you will be stopping containers, not removing them. Right? Because the stopped container will not consume RAM, but it might consume some of your hard disk. And hard disk is the cheapest asset on your system. మీ ల్యాప్టాప్ మొత్తంలో మీ సిస్టమ్ మొత్తంలో అన్నిటికన్నా చీపెస్ట్ యూటిలిటీ ఏమైనా ఉందంటే ఇట్ ఈస్ స్టోరేజ్. Storage is cheaper now. All right. Okay. Now let me do docker ps. I have these many containers. Docker ps -a. I have to remove all of them. Right. So one way what I can do is I can do this. Docker rm, either take container id, copy it, paste it. Here also you take, you copy and you paste it, and you can put all the container IDs and you can execute them. So now you do docker ps -a. Right? But for few containers you can do copy paste. Right? For few containers you can do copy paste. I don't want to use it. Okay. So let us use the command line to delete all the containers. Okay. Do we have any running containers now? Yes or no? To check that, what is the command? Docker ps. If you have a running container, you have to add -f. That is the ground rule. Otherwise, it will not be deleted. Right? Rest of all the containers are dead now. So it's easy. Right? So what shall I do now? What I'll do is docker rm, and here I have to pass the container IDs of all of them. Yes, copy paste, by copy paste I am trying to do it. Let me see this whether it will work in this way. Docker ps -a and -q. What is it giving? All the container IDs. Is this not what I want? Yes. Now output of this I'll be passing it to remove. దీని అవుట్పుట్ నేను రిమూవ్ పాస్ చేసుకుంటా. So what can I do? Docker rm, and now I am executing one more Linux command. And whenever you want to execute a Linux command, sub command within the Linux command, you'll use something called as $. Simple. All right. And now docker ps -a -q. So docker ps -a -q will be executed first. It will give list of all of the container IDs, and then it will be passed to docker rm. Since we have one container which is running, it makes sense for us to use minus. Simple. Making sense? All right. Now let me do docker ps. I'll not see anything obviously. And now docker ps -a. Even here I'll not be seeing anything, because removing the container means you are removing the history also. If you don't want to lose history, don't remove, stop the container. That's it. Right? That's how it would work. Simple. All right. Now let us apply this remove to images also. Now I have spoken about removal of containers. What is the difference between container and an image? Container is something, your application, that is something which runs. Right? So image is just a representation of it. When image gets memory, gets all of these utilities, then it will form a container. Image, when you download, is nothing but some storage space. That's it. Image ante some storage space ante. It has no definite purpose. But whenever you basically execute that image, it forms a container which can do some stuff. Image cannot do anything. Image will just have a definition of something. It is like code. When you give the code, until unless you execute code has no purpose, right? So you can think of basically images a notation of what you want to run in your container, a notation of what you want to run in your container. Now let me do docker images. This will give me a list of all of them. Now let us assume that I want to delete. So in this case I'll be using docker rmi. You can give name of the image or id of the image. So let us assume I want to remove hello world. So copy this hello world or copy this id, anything is same. Okay, so basically it has deleted it. Now let me do docker images. I'm not saying hello world anymore, right? But let us assume that I want to remove all the images from my system. I want to remove all the images from my system, exactly like what we have done in the docker, right? So let us see docker images minus q. What does it give? Two image IDs, right? This if you pass to the RMI command, problem solved. So docker RMI, since I'm running one more Linux command, I'm using dollar, okay, parenthesis, and then I'm saying docker images minus q. Okay, now let me do docker images. My system is clean. It has no image, it has no container, right? So this command line I'm combining with this with the base some stuff of Linux, right? And similarly, if you want to run it on PowerShell also, you will have the same command line, nothing changes. In Windows, for example, if you install it on Windows 10 server, Windows 10 not server, or Windows 2016 server, your commands are exactly the same. Your commands are exactly the same. Same on Mac also. Not even a single line of change in the command based out of your operating system where you have installed it, right? Now I want to just download the image. I don't want to run the container. What will be the command? What is that command? Docker pull. So I want to run this docker pull, and let me use nginx. Nginx is sensible for me because it is simple, 107 MB, right? I can do Jenkins also, it will take more time because here my idea is not to run the application, to show the pull stuff, right? So what is the first line which you are seeing there? Using a default tag called as latest. What is that? Let us try to find out what that is, right? So the site where we are trying to get all of this information is from Docker Hub. Okay, I'll go over here. This is what I'm using. Okay, so are you seeing something called as tags over here? Here, yes. Okay, now let me see on the tags. What are tags looking like? Generally, for every application, we will have version, right? All right. Similarly, for every image, we'll have tags. And whenever you say Docker run nginx, it will go and find a tag with latest. It will go and find a tag with as a tag called as latest. So whatever is latest will be downloaded. So now let me just go and download that Docker 1.14-perl. Shall I try that? Yes. Now what I do is Docker pull. Okay. Image name is nginx colon tag of your image. So tag of my image is 1.14 hyphen. Okay. So all these days, whenever you are saying Docker pull nginx to the Docker engine, it was Docker pull nginx colon latest. And Docker used to fill it up. Monoraila. But whenever you write Docker pull Jenkins, the command that actually goes to the Docker hub is Docker pull Jenkins colon latest. Jenkins colon latest. Whenever you don't give a tag, the default tag is latest. Here I am giving specifically a tag. So see what happens. So for the same application, I can have multiple images. It doesn't mean that the one application is one image. That's the best part of it. Now, in the same machine, I can host Jenkins 2 and Jenkins 1 also. And I don't need to install anything on my system apart from Docker engine. Both the versions are running, right? So generally, testers, if you know, okay, one of the other important use case of Docker is to simulate your test environments. So what is the most famous defect that testers will always tell? It was one working yesterday. For the people who are working, I think I'm quite sure that you have heard it a lot. It was working in the last version, but not now. Now it is very easy to prove that whether it was working or not working, right? So I can basically say Docker pull yesterday's version, Docker pull today's version, Docker run yesterday's version, and Docker run today's version. Straight, everything is in here. That's the best part of Docker. And there is no need for you to remember or basically do a hell lot of things. Just you need to run in the same way. All right. Now let me do Docker images. So what are you seeing? Image name is same, right? For both of the thing, image name is same. Tag, for one it is latest, the other one is 1.14. How about image ID? Different, right? Okay. Now let me pull one more image. Docker pull. This time I want to pull 1.14. Nginx colon 1.14. Sorry. Okay. Now let me do Docker images. Okay. So what is happening? Are you seeing? We have three versions of the same application. Okay. Functionality might be same. They are different versions. All right. So you can run all of them in the same machine. Now I can say Docker run. All right. All these days, how would we say Docker run Nginx? Whenever you use this command, what would happen? It will add colon latest to it automatically. Okay. So if I want to run 1.14 hyphen Perl, then what will you do? Colon 1.14 hyphen. So whenever you are not using colon, Docker engine will add colon and latest to it. So all these time, whenever we are running Docker run hello world, we were using Docker run hello world colon latest. Docker run Jenkins, Docker run Jenkins colon latest. Right. So a image with the latest tag is the active product, or whatever is your current stable release. For all the other stuffs, you will have versions. Tags are much like your application versions, much like your application version. Are we good? Yes. So is there a purpose for that version now? Right. And how do you specify version? Image name colon tag. Image name colon tag. And we will be using the same stuff while we are running the container and while we are dealing with images also. While we are dealing with images also. Now let me use this. Okay. Docker run this. 1 minute. Docker run. I don't want to run it in the. I want to run it in the background. So I'm giving -d. The default mode is attached, or what we call as a console mode. So let me use this. Running in the background. Similarly, I'll use 1.14 running in the background. Nginx, or I'll use Nginx colon latest. Both are same. Running in the background. Now I use Docker. Yes. 3 containers running. Yes. So same version of the application, same application with 3 different versions, I'm able to run on the same machine. That's the whole point. Okay. So it doesn't mean that image is one version. Image is one application. For that application, it can have multiple versions to it. So you will, whenever you install Tomcat based applications, you can have Tomcat 7, Tomcat 8, and Tomcat 9 images. So with every application release, you will get a Docker image also. Okay. Now let us go back to our actual DevOps. In the DevOps, what was the first step? Developers write the code. And then what we do? Build and package the application. With every build and package, we will also create a Docker image with some tag so that we can go back to that build. Yes or no? Yeah, I have written the code. I have submitted it to the repository, right? And then with that build, with that whatever has been generated package, we will also be doing one extra step, which is creating a Docker image with some version on it. So that whenever you want to simulate anything, you can go back to that Docker version, right? And then once we create this Docker image, we will do one more step. We will publish it to repository. We will publish it to repository. In our case, we will publish it to something like Docker Hub, right? So for downloading the images, what is the command? Pull. For publishing the image, the command is opposite to it, which is push. Once you build your application, you will be using some operation called as push, which will take your image to the repository. Done. As simple as that. Quite common sense, right? So now, is it relevant to every build? Docker image creation happens with every step, every build of your company, if they want to go with Docker applications, right? The most advantageous part of it is, let us assume that your application is in Linux, core Linux, right? And basically your tester or developer wants to see how the current build is basically working on, and the server is still not ready because the build has to happen and many other things have to happen before basically the server is updated, right? Now what he can simply do, he can just say Docker pull your application's name colon whatever version which or tag whatever you have created, and he can see in his local machine itself. There is no need of any other operating system to be installed, right? So just like if I want to add nginx, what is that I have done? Docker pull nginx colon whatever tag it is. Similarly, your team will be using docker pull whatever application name which you are using colon whatever tag that has been given to you. Done. So Docker, apart from all the other benefits, also has one major benefit to the testing community and the dev community, is to simulate production environments on your local machines. And there are many companies which I know who don't containerize the applications. They containerize the application just to simulate on their local machine, because it is very difficult for them or very costly for them to simulate the production environment. For example, if you take an example of bank, all right, if you want to simulate bank or a core banking system on your laptop or on your server, it is very difficult because there is a lot of servers. Now let us assume that there are 10 applications, which means 10 containers for me, right? If I get a decent machine, I can run all the 10 containers and simulate some sort of test banking environment so that I can test my application locally for the basic functionalities. That's the whole point. Whether it is equivalent to your production server, in the case of banking, no, but in the case of many applications, yes. That's the whole advantage. So Docker, when we started our discussion, we said that it is used so that your applications can run effectively without giving lot of memory to OS. You are giving memory to your application itself, all the privileges, right? That is the advantage. And we have seen how we can use a physical hardware and all of that. And now I am adding one more perspective to it. It is very easy to simulate your production environments, dev environments, all of them in your local desktop itself. The only thing is you should have a decent memory. If you see, all of this I am running in 1 GB RAM and 1 core CPU processor. Imagine what will happen if you have a 8 GB RAM and your i5s or i7s. It will be much better. That's the whole idea. Yes, looking good. Yeah. So what do you think is the immediate effect which you need to do now? We should be in a position to build our own images. We should be in a position to build our own images. So for that we need to write Docker files. For that we need to write Docker files, and that's where our journey will be now. That's where our journey will be now. To write a Docker file, what is it needed? You should know manual steps. No other technicality required. You should know manual steps. Ante antak minchi emi ledhu. Docker file is the writing Docker file is very much non-technical. The only thing which you should know is you should know how to get your application up and running from command line. That's a challenge, right? The only thing which you need to know is If I give you a command line, how will you get your application up and working? Right? Are we good? If you know that, you can build an image. If you know that, you can build an image. For example, I'll show you some image, how they write it. Uh, let me, yeah, let me not go to those images. Let me go to something which is much simpler than this. A square zone. We have something called as Docker zone, image creation. Hello world. This is what you write, and this is how it looks. Is it visible to everyone, right? So I've used something called as from. Forget about it. Maintainer, that is my name. And there is some run. And in run, what is happening? What are they? Plain Linux commands. Are you using any programming in here? That's it. Right? To achieve whatever I wanted to try in this application, I had to run whatever it is. Right? Now we will be learning procedurally what that from means. Right? What is this apt commands are okay. Those are manual steps for getting your application done. Then what is that CMD doing? What is that from doing? What is that maintainer doing? Right? So any Docker image will have something which looks like this, and there will be many other things like env, okay, port, env expose. There will be a lot of stuffs, and the from, the maintainer, the run, the CMD, whatever you are using there has a specific meaning, and those are called as instructions. Those are called as instructions. In Docker file, we add instructions and our custom steps to form a image. To form a image. Now, without any Docker knowledge, let us see. You just tell me what I'm trying to do. From, forget about it. I'm not interested in from. I'm not expecting that you know this, but what is that you have made out from this? So, so basically, this is this 4 lines will help you in building something which is called as a Tomcat image. That's it. All right? Making sense? So it is not difficult. You should know all of them. Okay, what does that from, what does that expose, what does that run, what does that CMD mean, and all of that, right? But the actual images which we write, now let me take you to the reality. Those are simpler versions of it. Okay, now let me take something which is already there, which is something which we are using. The best part is you go to any application, you will be using similar instructions. So there is from, forget about label, there is something called as env, and there are run statements, and run statements are huge. That is because to bring up this application, it takes huge number of steps. Huge number of steps. That's what he has done. So it might look huge, it might look many. There are a lot of steps. Forget about all of that. But run is, as in run, you basically write the basic steps to get your application up and running. That is what a run is. All right? Okay, fine. And now you are one more common sense kind of a command, expose. Okay, so whatever application container which I am trying to build will use some port. Will use some port. For example, if I am building MySQL image, I will write expose 3306 over there. I have written Tomcat. Tomcat by default uses port 8080. So I have written expose 8080 over there. All right. So, and then there is something called as CMD. There is something called as CMD. Looking good? Not a very difficult thing to do. So this is where we'll be going into learning each and every instruction. Okay. And then getting back to what is required for it. Right. So that's what I would want to cover. I'll stop the class over here. Right. And let me take some questions and see what it is. Okay. So I had a very rough day yesterday. I didn't have enough sleep, so I can't really take the rest of the session. I didn't thought that I will be able to do like this. Somehow Docker has given me energy. Right. I thought I cannot take more than half an hour of class today. All right. Okay. So today we'll not have a cloud part. I'm stopping my discussion over here. Tomorrow we'll have it. To compensate this, we'll be working on Saturday, Sunday this time. Right. Yeah, you get 2 days of holidays, man. Somehow we have to compensate, right? So this time we'll have classes on Sunday also, this weekend, Saturday and Sunday both. All right. Now let me look at questions from the web and then I'll take it from you guys. So how is Docker looking? Very complicated? Better than yesterday? Yeah, please have that patience. Trust me, in 1 week you will have a better version of Docker. You will not be able to understand all of Docker in one day. And I cannot simplify Docker further than this, because I'm quite sure that many of you people might not be accustomed in installing applications. You might be using it. Someone does it for you, you'll start working. That is how typical environments in your companies would be. Here you are going on to the other side and you are trying to find out how can I basically get this application in a very simple manner. Okay, so please have some patience. It is a very simple and a very interesting concept. All right. uh, Let me scroll down and see. In Docker I have pulled one application, but it doesn't include. Is there any way to identify the status of the application? Okay, so not covered in this classroom, but I'll tell you what it is. One thing is, I have set the example of hello world and I've set you the example of nginx. So whenever you are running your application might be short lived because of the nature of how you have written the image, but if you want to really understand what is the reason for you or failure, there is a command called as docker logs, and give the name of container or container id. Then you will come to know what has happened. Right. How to remember Linux commands? Is it available in Google? The same thing which I've done for Docker. You can go for Linux command line arguments, or you can get Linux cheat sheet. To start with, don't go with Linux cheat sheet. I'm using a Ubuntu machine. So basically download something called as Ubuntu cheat sheet. All right. And then you will use it. Ubuntu 16 cheat sheet to be more specific. All right. Okay. Can you please create one image? Yeah, I'll be doing that. But since if you don't know all of this, right? Even if I create a Docker file, you'll not be able to understand why I have done all of that. All right. So we'll be doing that. Okay. And it will consist of one more command tomorrow, which I'll be using, which is called as Docker build. Column mira command munde you can basically refer that command for building the image from this Docker file. I'll be using a command called as Docker build. Right. Okay. What is the significance of 8080 in Docker ps command? Okay, 8080 tells that the container which you have started is exposing one port, which is 8080. Whenever you are seeing Docker ps and you see some ports over there, it is trying to tell that the containers which you have started are exposing the following ports. If we create a Jenkins image using Docker image, user will create. I didn't got your question, but let me try to tell the crux of it. You mean to say that in the Docker you have created a Jenkins image, right? And then basically in Jenkins, for the people who have not new, don't worry about it. This is one of the steps which I said. In Jenkins, you need to give admin privileges for the user called as Jenkins. Here also you have to do the same thing. Jenkins is not going to change the behavior because it is Docker, right? So here what we need to do is somehow from the Docker file we need to tell that this is a user who has to run Jenkins, right? Okay, so we have to do that. So let us learn it how. Yeah, there is no exclusion to that restriction for Jenkins is still there, right? Short-lived container will be stopped and kept aside. It will be started, it will be stopped. That's it. It will not be deleted. Deletion is user's responsibility. We have to execute docker rm command. We have to execute docker rm command. Docker will not delete any container on its own. It will just stop the container if it is not working. It will not delete it. Right? Deleting is user's responsibility. Right? While doing rm command, we have to preserve it or not. So whenever you are using rm, you have reached to a state where you don't want to preserve anything. That's the meaning of it. So you don't need to preserve anything. Okay, rm చేస్తున్నానంటేనే నాకు దాని గురించి హిస్టరీ కూడా అవసరం లేదని అర్థం. Otherwise I will just stop the container, be happy with it because I get the history. Whenever you are doing rm or rmi, you have reached to the position where you don't want history, so that's how it is. Can we run licensed softwares using docker? Yes, you can, but that license you have to pass from that run command. When you are building that docker, okay, you have to pass the license from command line itself. Or for some applications, whenever you are running it for the first time from the web, it will ask for license. You can also fill it up from there, whatever that makes sense. All right, we have pulled nginx images from windows 10 machine to local repository. Once it is done, how long how can we log on onto the nginx server specifically is my question relevant over here. So let it be any server. Forget about whether it is windows 10, mac or linux, because the way docker engine works is the same. So whenever you say docker run nginx, right? So nginx is a which application? Is it a http application or a tcp application? http application. So the ideal way is http : ip address of your container, IP address of your container. But there are many cases where your docker's IP address will not be accessible. Okay, so for that we will be using a concept called as port forwarding, which we'll be learning very soon. Right? So the basic idea is exactly the same. To log in an nginx on a linux machine, what will you do? http : // IP address of your linux machine. Here you are trying to tell http : // IP address of your container. Okay, since we don't know the IP address of the container, I am unable to basically, I will not be able to show you at this moment, but the whole idea is exactly the same. Okay, so with container you don't get anything different. You will get exactly the same way like how you are using your machines. All right. Okay, can we use images created through packer in docker? Yes, there is a plugin which does that, but as I said, while learning packer also, it is not a very good practice to create docker images from packer, because when you create docker images from packer, you will lose this docker file concept. You will lose this docker file concept. All right, that's the problem whenever you try to basically do manually. Docker file is very much required, very much required. All right, yeah. So good, there are a whole lot of questions. I think I'll see. How can I change the name of the container while running? Once the container is created, you cannot change its name. Right? Anything to do with the container, most of the things in the container can be set only while creating it, not after creating it. The only things which you can change, we will be learning. Okay, in tomorrow's class I'll be basically showing you the basic concepts. All right, the basic image creation, I'll define what it is, and then I will tell you the most important and the decent thing which is never asked in interview but very important. How is this container concept working at all? అసలు ఈ కంటైనర్ ఎలా వర్క్ అవుతుంది? Actually, what is happening in the background? How is your linux machine able to do all of this, or how is it your windows machine able to do all of this? So that is what the major discussion would be, and after that I think you'll be able to you will be able to answer the question whatever you have asked. That's the whole stuff. Right? How can I, are the 3 different versions of nginx images? How can I, what is it? Are the 3 different versions? Okay, all 3 different versions of nginx images, how can I differentiate? You have tag. How did you download it? You have used tag. For one image you had a tag called as latest, for the other one you have a tag called as 1.14, and for the other one you have tag called as 1.14 -perl. So to differentiate images, we'll be using name plus tag combination. Name plus tag combination, that's how it is. Yeah, wonderful. As a DevOps engineer, we need to build Docker files. Yes, that is your first expectation. That is your first expectation, right? Yeah. And once you know you are good at this, then you should be able to orchestrate whatever you have created. That is when you learn Kubernetes, right? What is the technical difference between command and PowerShell? Can we do the same operation? The basic purpose is same. Command or PowerShell are terminal for Windows. PowerShell is much stronger in capabilities when compared to the command prompt because it is a new gen terminal. That's it. The basic purpose of why you use the command prompt or why you use the PowerShell is exactly the same. Okay, but PowerShell is much stronger tool. All right. Difference between Prime Optimus and Bumblebee. If you are understanding what I am trying to tell, exactly both are same. Both are transformers. But Prime Optimus is considered to be much stronger and all of that, right? So PowerShell is exactly the same thing. All right. When does Ansible start? Okay, any plans after this? Okay, that is about history, that is about future, right? We'll be discussing about. Satish will be able to answer that. Okay. uh, do we need to install Ubuntu ISO image along with VirtualBox? No, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to do anything. No. Right. Okay. Where is the local repository resides? Local repository resides in your machine. Local repository ఎక్కడ ఉంటుంది? Local లోనే ఉంటుంది కదా. Okay, to be very specific, to be very honest to it, it is nothing but one folder structure in your system. The images which are storing, there is a specific folder structure which Docker follows, and your images are there. All right. Okay. We pull Nginx images from Windows 10 machine to the local repository. Once it is done, how can we log in? I think I have answered that, right? Yes. How to stop a container? So you have commands like those are next commands, but I'm telling you straight away that there is a very common sense kind of a command. There are two commands called as stop and start. Once the container is created, to stop the container you will be using docker stop. To start the stopped container you will be using a command called as docker start. That's it. Start and stop. Where will be the status of running containers behavior in the case of host restarts? It is all in some file history, some history of your doc. For example, you restart. Okay, your containers might not be started, but ps minus a will tell this container was running. This container was running. That is what the purpose of ps minus a is. The history of all of Docker is stored in a specific folder structure of Docker. Okay, we'll be coming back to that because I can tell one folder structure, but it is good for Ubuntu, not for Red Hat. So let us find a common way of really addressing that, right? Okay, if we create a Jenkins machine user, I think I have said this. Using different versions, there will be any port conflict. Okay, there will be. I will not say there will be a port conflict because what is it? HTTP colon container IP address colon port, right? For every container, you are getting a unique IP address. So ideally, there should not be any port conflict, right? But there is one concept which I have not spoken, which is called as port forwarding. Then this conflict comes into play. Since we have not spoken about port forwarding, for me, for now, the answer is no. Once we learn about port forwarding, the answer could be yes. Right? Yeah. Can we attach to the container that is running in background? Absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Yeah. Also, after creating the container, how can we give developer a login and start it working? Wait till today. Wait till tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we'll be doing that. Right? Do we need to take a backup before we stop the container? We have not learned something about Docker storage, right? Yet. Right? When we learn about storage, you will have an answer for that. Right? Till now, whatever you have learned, is it possible in Docker? Answer is yes. How it is possible? For that, we need to learn Docker storage. Yes. Okay. We can use Amazon for our complete DevOps training since we are not using Ubuntu ISO. I would recommend Amazon Cloud because why do you want to have your system? Anyway, it is a free machine, right? So I would recommend using cloud, right? But if you want something on your machine, you can do the same job on having a virtual machine on your system also, right? But I would recommend cloud, easier way to organize. Whenever you want, you can create a machine, stop the machine, and all of that, right? Okay. Can we run two web services in the same container? Technically possible. Design wise, you should never do that. Technically it is possible, but the way Docker has been defined, that is against against its definition. Is it possible? The answer is yes. Yeah, good. Any other questions in the room? Yes. Mm. Yes. What do you mean by how can we identify that using tags? మీరు డౌన్లోడ్ చేసేటప్పుడు ట్యాగ్ పనికిరాదు. ట్యాగ్ ఎప్పుడు ఉపయోగిస్తాం? ఇమేజ్ని క్రియేట్ చేసేటప్పుడు. For the person who is creating Jenkins 1.7, he will obviously know that he has to put a tag called as 1.7, right? While you are using it, you should have a tag called as 1.7. Tag is not dynamic. Tag is something which you give with version. Whatever you are building, this is a label for it, right? While manufacturing your products, you will apply a sticker, right? That sticker will never be dynamic. It will be based out of what you are trying to create. That's how it is. So create చేసేవాడు నేను ఇప్పుడు చేస్తున్నాను కాబట్టి దీని tag 1.7. Since I am doing it in this way, the tag is 2.0. That's how we do it, right? So that will not come into play. That will not come into. Any other questions in the room? Do we write pom.xml? No, you don't write pom.xml, but you use them. All right. You will not be working on pom, but you might be working in some cases with something called as settings.xml in Maven. So how to configure some Maven settings. Pom.xml you don't need, but you should be in a basic position to understand it. What is it building? Where it will build? That's it. That is more than enough. It is not your expectation that you need to write pom.xml. For the people who don't know what pom.xml is, it is a project model of Java applications that have been written using Maven. All right. So yeah, is port mapping or port forwarding both the same or different? They're almost the same. They're almost the same. Yes. Any other questions in the room? Yes. You have to install Java in your container. Specific version of Java. Java can't I install? నా అప్లికేషన్ జావా 6 లో రన్ అవుతుంది. నేను కంటైనర్ లో రన్ లో జావా 6 ఇన్స్టాల్ చేయడానికి కూడా రాస్తా. ఫస్ట్ ఐ విల్ ఇన్స్టాల్ జావా 6 and then I will do specific to whatever my application it is. So I will get the environment. So whatever is required for your application to work, you will not have that environment in your container. Okay. So let it be Java 6, let it be Python 2.7 or 3. Whatever it is. So whatever is required for your application, you will be writing in a run statement. That's how it is. So any dependencies will be in the container, not outside. Yeah. What do you mean by supportable? Docker is okay. So okay, the whole point. Do you have any support for Docker? There is a Docker Enterprise Edition for which you will get the support. For open source, you don't get it. The only thing which you have to rely is on community, much like how you do on Linux. Yes, right. Okay. Any other questions in the room? When I am running in the container in the backend mode, it is getting killed because your image has been created to kill itself. మీ image రాసిన code లో suicide code ఉంది. Your container is committing suicide. Let us find out why. But for that, you should be knowing some more technical terms. My answer to that is your container is committing suicide. Right? Also, after creating the container, how will we give developer login? I think I have told this, right? So I'm not in a position for whatever we have covered in Docker till now. Okay. I'll not be able to basically answer, but the technical reason, if you want to search in Google to find out what it is interactive login into container. Okay, we'll be logging in into container into the using the interactive terminal. Okay, so that's how it is. Oh, videos duration. Naga, I think I'm not. You have asked me about Ansible, right? So Ansible will be after we finish Docker, we'll be learning Windows DevOps, where we'll be learning PowerShell DSC, and Windows containers, and then we'll be learning Ansible. So it will take approximately 14 plus 2 more weeks. So 1 month of time before we touch Ansible, right? Yeah. You didn't ask Ansible. I'm sorry, my memory is bad. Can you just reiterate your question? Video duration. Okay, you mean how much time this video will be? Duration is whatever duration the class is. How long it will be available for you? It will be 3 or 4 days. Just speak with Satish. Okay, I don't keep track of videos, recordings and all of that. My responsibility is only delivering this content, right? And after this, if you are facing any technical difficulty, it is there, but to my knowledge it will be minimum for 3 days, I'm sure. But if they have increased more than that, I'm not sure about it. Satish will be able to answer it, right? Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes, yes, please go ahead. Yeah. Mm. Mm. In the container, is it? Yeah, you can log in into the container. We have not logged in into the container, right? Once we log in into the container, you will be executing the same Java commands or export commands or set commands to find out what is Java home, what is the version of Java that is present. It is possible, right? But for that, you have to get into the container. We still don't know how to get into the container. Once we learn it, it is possible. All right? Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I had. And day by day, try to basically use. Today, your practice is very simple: pull, run, RM, RMI, right? 4 simple commands. Play with that. Tomorrow, let us add some more things to it so that it will become easier. Okay? ఏ రోజుకి ఆ రోజు ఫాలో అయితే ఈజీ అండి. ఓకే, చాకల పొద్దులాగా బాకీ పెట్టారు నెలకోసారి కట్టుకుందాం అని, అదైతే డబ్బులే కట్టేయచ్చు, ఇది అలా తెవలదు. Because after 14 days you will have something new. You have to learn PowerShell and PowerShell DSC. Please try to finish it as you learn it. It becomes much simpler. All right? Okay then. Any specific reason why DevOps we started from Docker? Because we follow a cycle over there. Over here, we have a summer season, winter season, right? You have joined during summer. That's how it is. So for us, it is a continuous journey. We have DevOps which runs in phases. Probably if you have joined after 15 days, you would have started from Windows DevOps. All right? We have DevOps which runs throughout the year. You will be joining at certain point. That's how it works. All right? So you have been fortunate enough to join during Docker. That's what I can answer, right? Yes. Okay then. So, okay, so ఇక్కడ రమ్మనండి. so so basically there is one of our lecturer who will be helping you out in your communication skills. Ramna has spoken about it, right? We speak English, we don't speak English, right? And he will be helping you in understanding what is important, right? So I think please follow this instruction. They are very useful, as much useful as technology. You should be able to communicate what it is. Okay, మీరు మిరపకాయల గురించి అడిగితే ఎదుటోడు పంచదార ఇచ్చాడు అనుకోండి, ఎంత అసహ్యంగా ఉంటుందో, మన కమ్యూనికేషన్ స్కిల్ బాగోపోతే అంతే జరుగుతుంది, రైట్? సో దే కంప్లీట్లీ కాంట్రాస్టింగ్, వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్ స్కిల్, రైట్? ఫైన్, యా, థ్యాంక్స్.
Good morning, guys. So 2 minutes of time. So just a announcement from Quality Thought Management. So recently we are introducing spoken English classes here to help you more on seeking the job or job opportunities. Okay, so Deepak garu manaka ee area lo help chestu untaru. So బిజినెస్ టీమ్ అనేది ఒకటి మనం డెవలప్ చేస్తున్నామండి ఇక్కడ. సో టు గెట్ మోర్ ఆపర్చునిటీస్. ఓకే, సో ఫర్ ద స్టూడెంట్స్ డెవాప్స్లో కానీ టెస్టింగ్లో కానీ ఆర్పిఏలో కానీ. సో వీఆర్ రిక్వెస్టింగ్ దీపక్ హెల్ప్ టు సీక్ ఆర్ టు గెట్ ద మోర్ ఆపర్చునిటీస్ ఫ్రమ్ ద కంపెనీస్. ఓకే, సో సెకండ్ థింగ్ ఏంటంటే, సో రీసెంట్గా మనం హెచ్ఆర్ స్కిల్స్, హెచ్ఆర్ మేనేజర్స్ ఎలా మాట్లాడాలి, సో వచ్చిన ఈమెయిల్స్కి మనం రిప్లై ఎలా ఇవ్వాలి అనే ఏరియాలో సో పీపుల్ చాలా స్ట్రగుల్ అవుతున్నారని చెప్పి వీ కండక్ట్ ద స్పెషల్ క్లాసెస్. సో 11:30 ఈరోజు 11:30 నుంచి 1 వరకు అండి. సో ఆ స్కిల్స్ మీద దీపక్ గారు మనకి 603లో క్లాసెస్ కండక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు. సో ప్లీజ్ యూటిలైజ్ దిస్ ఆపర్చునిటీ. అపార్ట్ ఫ్రమ్ దట్, దీపక్ గారు అదర్ యాక్టివిటీస్ ఏంటంటే, సో గెట్ ద మోర్ జాబ్ ఆపర్చునిటీస్ ఫ్రమ్ ద డిఫరెంట్ కంపెనీస్. ఓకే, త్రూ ద బిజినెస్ టీమ్ పార్ట్. సెకండ్ వన్ ఈజ్ స్పోకెన్ ఇంగ్లీష్ క్లాసెస్ అండి. సో ఎవరైతే ఇంగ్లీష్లో వీక్గా ఉన్నారో సో వాళ్ళ కోసం స్పెషల్లీ అరేంజ్డ్ స్పోకెన్ ఇంగ్లీష్ క్లాసెస్. ఓకే, సో రెగ్యులర్లీ, సో ఆన్ ద 603 అనమాట. సో దోస్ ఆర్ యాక్టివిటీస్ బై దీపక్. సో మీకు హెల్ప్ చేయడానికి మేము ఏ యాక్టివిటీస్ చేస్తున్నామో ఇంట్రడ్యూస్ చేయడానికి దీపక్ గారిని ఇక్కడ తీసుకొచ్చాము. సో యూటిలైజ్ దిస్ ఆపర్చునిటీ టు గెట్ ఫుల్ఫిల్ యువర్ జాబ్ రిక్వైర్మెంట్. ఓకే, సో దీపక్ గారు విల్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ యూ వాట్ ఎగ్జాక్ట్లీ హీ ఈస్ డూయింగ్ హియర్.
Very good morning, guys. How are you? All right, good. not sure if we do English online.
Yeah, fine. Communicate the message.
Okay, is that working? It is? No? It work just a little. No. It is? Hello? This one? Hello? Can you hear me now? Okay, so I'm Deepak and I have close to 9+ years experience in the corporate world. I work with companies like Deloitte, HSBC, and Google, and I have 5+ years of experience working in the US. And I'm not going to tell which company I work for. It's kind of private. All right. So it's been a month that I've been working with Quality Thought, and initially I started off as a spoken English trainer, where I've observed that a few of the candidates, I mean, most of the candidates are using fake experience and they're walking into the companies. So these things don't match. I mean, personally, you are a fresher and your resume shows it as an experienced candidate. And once you go for the interviews, the interviewer would would ask the questions, thinking that you are an experienced person. Okay, so the use of terminology that you use when you are speaking or communicating with the interviewer, it will be very difficult, and they will just easily know that you are just a fresher and you're just using fake experience. Okay. So HR interview questions, I've prepared few questions, and I will also take a mock interview personally to see where exactly you are standing and what are your areas of improvement and what are your areas of development. Okay. The second thing is, I just don't want to say that this is just a spoken English course. I would not put it that way, because spoken English is a part of business communication skill. So initially, we're going to start off with very interesting topic, which is email etiquette. We're going to understand what is email etiquette, and there's some rules. And I will be giving you multiple scenarios where you have to write in an email and you have to share it with me. Even in email etiquettes, I have observed that most of the candidates use basic English. Okay, we need to use professional English. So I will be sharing you some vocabs which can be used on a regular basis depending upon scenarios. Okay, this is about email etiquette, and seeing the way you frame your sentence structures, the usage of tenses. If I observe that you need some spoken English training, even that will be provided. And last but not the least, I'm also a part of business development team here at Quality Thought. So business development team means we're making sure that candidates don't just get trained, but they will also be given assistance in finding opportunities. So we have multiple vendors. I have contacts of multiple vendors, and if there is an opening in any of the top MNCs, I will be getting an email and I will be sharing it with you with the job requirement and the skills. Then you can share your updated CV with me, and I'll forward it to them. Okay, so we are a team aggressively working to make sure show you open doors where you can be successful in these companies. We're also grooming you on interview skills, so make sure you grab this opportunity. The classes will begin today at 11:30 in 603. Is that loud and clear? All right, so we'll see you today at 11:30 then. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
కానీ నేను